Namaste. Welcome to our 57th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We're beginning a new chapter, the 13th chapter, called The Distinction Between the Field and the Knower of the Field. The word is kshetra, which means field or area or expanse. In this case, it means the world we find ourselves in, the whole cosmos, both just the little area we're in, and then the whole globe itself, and then the solar system itself, and then even beyond that. So we've been, in a sense, plopped down in the middle of it. So it's not a bad idea of to know what's the nature of it. And also important to know what it is and what we are, because people continually identify with things that are not themselves. I mean, we're not really our emotions are alike, but people like to brag and say, well, I just like so and so, so I really like that, or I can't stand it. I'm a very introspective person, or blah, 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 blah. They're so busy loving themselves and starring in their own movie that they can expound to you very well, see what they are. And it's always what they're not that they're falsely identifying with. And that's understandable. You and I go to a motion picture. We see something happening as tension, and we feel tension. Even what's going to happen next? Nothing's happening right now. This is just a movie. How will they do it? We see a character on the screen. They discuss this. We don't like them. We see a character. We dislike. We do like them. You see? Or we're bored with the plot. Maybe we get up and walk out. But we're affected by it as if we're somehow in it and part of it. If it's a comedy, we all laugh. Maybe sometimes the whole audience cheers. Just think nothing has gone on. It's just been light and shadow and color. But we've identified with it. So we have to learn to know, who am I? And often the first step in knowing who am I is who or what am I not? So Arjuna says this: Prakriti and Purusha, the field and the knower of the field, knowledge and that which should be known. I wish to know this, O Krishna. Very good idea. First, Prakriti means energy. Energy that is vibrating and showing to us, or if we want, we can say it's like the water on the ocean that forms into waves. Prakriti is energy, which is ever shifting, ever changing, and takes on countless forms and dissolves from those forms as well. That's Prakriti, energy. We can say creation. Purusha is the person, the spirit, the consciousness experiencing this. And we have our own Prakriti, we're embodied in, as we then, our bodies are embodied in the world around us. And we need to understand, first of all, what's the nature of both of them? How did they ever get together? And how is it that the Purusha, the conscious being, how is it that the conscious being continually loses his awareness in awareness of Prakriti, in awareness of the outside, even the outside of him. I've had chronic backache all my life. They identify with it even. A lot of sick people, well, that's the only creative thing they can do is they just keep getting different kind of problems because they identify with the body. And a lot of sick people, hypochondriacs, think the disease is interesting. Since they're interested in it, it comes to them. And when they have it, they assume, since we project our own attitudes onto others, that they'll be interesting. So I grew up with people that could give you a catalog of what was wrong with them because they were interested in it and they figured you were too. They were entertained by it and they figured you'd be entertained by it. And in many cases, especially frankly in the American South, people are. I can't explain the human personality to anybody because I've got one myself. I can't explain. So there's Prakriti and Purusha, the field, the knower of the field, and frankly, the plower of the field, the farmer of the field that says, hey, I want to get this out of my life or my environment, and they work to do it. But their attention is all absorbed in that. So the knower of the field, then he mentions knowledge. In other words, well, what is knowing and what is knowledge? There's a knower of the field, but what is this thing that is the knowing, that is the knowledge? And that which should be known. I mean, just think, all the things I can see just by going like this, especially in this office where we've got tons of religious images and so on, but I look out of the window, I see trees, I see flowers, I see two mountain ranges, I see clouds in the sky, you see. What of all this am I going to put my mind on and really know? So he asks, well, then what is knowing? Okay. Sri Bhagavan, that is the holy God, Krishna, said, this body is called the field. Well, that's logical, isn't it? When we were in the body, we sowed seeds of karma. We did actions, and those actions, those karmas, were seeds, karmic seeds. And we sowed them in our bodies and in the world around us. And so we are the sower, and at the same time, that in which we've sown. And he who knows this is called the knower of the field, that fully back objective part of us. So say the knowers of these things. In other words, they not only know about the field, they know we're around and they tell us about it. All right. And know me also to be the knower of the field in all fields. So there's one field, but two knowers. The infinite spirit, and then us, the finite spirit, that are ever one, and whose permanent nature is consciousness, is awareness. And to be aware is to know. So we are, mentioned before, God is dreaming this world, this evolving world, this cosmos, and we are dreaming inside the dream right along with God. This is the fundamental fact. So everything we know, he knows. By the way, everything we experience, God experiences. We experience pain, God experiences the pain. We identify with it, God doesn't. but he does experience it. God is living in every living being, not just sentient being. God is living in every blade of grass. God is living in every single bacteria, every single germ that exists. God is in every cell that exists, experiencing it all. And therefore, the knower of the field in all the fields. The knowledge of the field and the knower of the field I consider to be the knowledge. In other words, we need to know there is the world and there is the God of the world, the Lord of the world. Jagadisha. In most temples, most Hindu temples, whether in the land of Bharat, of India, or outside, the song that is sung during public worship is called Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. Glory to the Lord of the world. And it begins with those words and goes on and speaks of the glory of God. So there is the Jagat, the world, and the Jagat Isha, the Lord of the world. And really knowing that, not knowing about it, but knowing that, perceiving, is the knowledge we need. The field, what it is and of what kind, what its modifications are, because you and I are overwhelmed by the constant change in this world. Whence they come, what's the source? And what are the knower's powers? What can I do about it? You know, a parachuter jumps out of the plane, goes down and lands somewhere, and then where's he going to go from there? What is it that he's supposed to do from there? And we've landed in this world, and those are also our questions. How this world changes, how does it develop? Why does it change? Also unexpectedly. How do we experience changes? Like there's sunshine and rain and so on. We have moods, happy moods, depressed moods, blah moods, and so on. Whence they come, and what are the knower's powers? What can we do about it? That here from me in brief, because it's so complex, in a century we wouldn't come to the end of it. This has been sung many times by the rishis, the sages, who actually see reality. Rishi means a seer, not just a philosopher. In many sacred chants, especially in the Vedas, but also you see Indian scriptures are all sung. The Bhagavad Gita is sung. The Bhagavad Gita, even in English, can be arranged. But I have, blessed are the merciful. So I'm not using that metric version, which, by the way, I have made. So you don't have to hear me sing it. In passages about Brahman, the absolute being, full of convincing reasoning, and this is very important. Intuition is there. Intuition does sort of make a leap to a perception of reality that we don't have a full intellectual explanation of or exposition of. But ultimately, real Dharma is utterly reasonable, is utterly logical. Though there are premises on which that is all based, that ultimately, at first, we just have to accept it. We're given medicine supposed to cure us. Well, we assume it will. We take it, we do get well. And so also, real Sanatana Dharma, the true religion of the whole world. In fact, we've just finished formatting and working on a book that's going to be printed. In it, the term universal is applied to what people call Hinduism, Hindu Dharma. And it is. It applies to us as a small universe, and then it applies to the whole great universe. And therefore, we have to really know it. And it's all reasonable. There is the book. I suppose I should have brought it to show it to you again and do a commercial, but the book we put out called Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Religion. It is a magnificent book. I really urge you to get it. Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Religion. It is a book first printed in 1902. By a committee of teachers from the Banaras Hindu University. And it was a textbook of basic Hindu Dharma, Hindu religion, philosophy. And it is so perfectly presented, so perfectly expressed. The English is magnificent. I don't think there was anybody in England or America that would have written so beautifully, so perfectly, yet so fully, clearly, so logically as they did. In fact, I'm reading it again right now for the fourth time, simply because for the three times after I first read it, it is so beautifully done that I start reading it, and it's so easy to read, and it has a rhythm of its own. So I think this is just great, and I love my Dharma, and so I'm reading it. And we're putting out another one that was put out by the very ashram where Yogananda lived when he lived in Benares, and edited by the monk he writes about, Swami Dayananda, in Autobiography of a Yogi. And it is, actually, they read the book, and the first book, and said, let's make a really, really advanced and full, therefore complex, version of this presentation. And they did, and it's wonderful. And it is totally reasonable. It makes sense. Some things can make sense, rational explanations. You know, people used to say, and it was in India, why is there an eclipse? Well, there's a demon called Rahu, and he doesn't like light, and he jumps up and he swallows the sun just temporarily, and we get an eclipse. It's kind of pathetic, isn't it? Even if it does come from India. So just because it's convincing doesn't mean it's true. But in this case, it's convincing and it's true. The great elements, mahabhutas, in other words, the fundamental building blocks of creation, of relative existence itself. The consciousness of I, asmita, there's a hum, that's the ego. We get that consciousness too. Oh, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm not this, I'm not that. However, the asmita is just the pure awareness of existence. Intellect, that's our ability to reason, to learn and to reason. And the unmanifest, the things that we don't see and yet we can intuit or we can believe in, and we can act upon as though they exist, and behold, the action works. Therefore, we ourselves prove that it does exist. The 10 senses and one, we'll go into that later, but we have many kind of senses. Imagination even is a sense. We just think of the 5 senses. The feeling of emotion, that's a sense too. It's actually a form of touch. But we have all these, and then the one thing, the one consciousness that is the sense of the senses, the seer of seeing itself. and the five fields of actions of the senses, the five levels of existence, the five bodies in which we live and in which we function. We'll come to those later. Desire, aversion, well, we all know what that is, wanting or not wanting. Pleasure, pain. The entire organism, the entire being and complex of this body and of the way we live through this thing. Consciousness, that's awareness of relative existence. And behind that, of course, is the consciousness itself, which is conscious of being conscious. Stability, because we weren't something yesterday that we were today. In fact, it's just sort of like sometimes, though this isn't a very positive example, I have mentioned before that when Mark Twain was very old and very famous, he went back to his hometown of Hannibal, Missouri. If you've read Tom Sawyer, that's really mostly his life and the things that he did. And this character, Huckleberry Finn, he knew him. But of course, he wasn't called Huckleberry Finn, but there was someone like that. And so this is very much of his life. So he was world famous. And he went back to his hometown of Hannibal, Missouri, down on the Mississippi River in Missouri, but quite close to the southern part of Illinois. I'm from Illinois, so I know it. And I've been there. So he returned to Hannibal, Missouri. He was very famous. There were no airplanes to come in that day, so he came into the train. And a band was there playing. And he got out, and of course, it was really good size train station, and here was a great platform. And hundreds of people were there. Many of them had known him. Others, they were the children of people who had known him, and so they'd all come to see him. So he gets out, and there's all these people, and the band is playing, and of course it's welcome, Samuel Clemens, because his name wasn't Mark Twain. And he looked, and coming down the platform was this very, very old, feeble man, not moving very quickly at all. Of course, Twain wasn't so spry at that time either. And he looked at him, and then he recognized this had been his best friend and his main partner in crime when he lived in Hannibal. And so the old man came walking up to him with a cane, and he stopped, he looked at him, and then he turned around and he looked at all the people that had come. And then he turned back. Oh, by the way, he was deaf. In those days, they didn't have what we have as hearing aids. They had this kind of long funnel thing they called an ear trumpet that you held up to your ear. It was so big, and then it went down to a small size that would fit right inside your ear. So he had this ear trumpet. And being deaf, like so many people, he spoke loudly. So he very loudly said, "The same damn fools, Sam. Just the same damn fools." And so there we find that over and over from life to life, it's the same damn fool stuff that we're presented with and that we have to deal with. All of its aspects. Okay. What is it then that helps us get through all this damn tomfoolery? Absence of pride, No, I've gone over the time, haven't I? Which is not unknown. So, uh, this thrilling subject will be carried forward in the very next talk. Until then, namaste. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And I hope you can forgive the rather pervasive rambling. I want to say occasional rambling, but let's be truthful. So, namaste.